So today we're going to be building an agent from start to finish, and what this agent is going to do is it's going to receive an email with a pitch deck attached to it. It's going to analyze that pitch deck, and then it's going to return the results. And I'm going to build this in two parts. The first part is going to be a super simple analysis, just to show how to work with emails, how to work with attachments, all of that. And then I'm going to expand on it and build something that actually annotates the slides individually, and instead of just sending back an analysis, it makes a new annotated PDF and sends that back to you, which I think is going to be a really cool loop to see finished. So to get started, I found this random pitch deck online. It's for like a D2C coffee company, and I have emailed it to myself here. So we are all set up with the test materials. I'm going to go to Mind Studio. I'm going to click Create New Agent, and we are going to get an empty canvas here. And so I'm going to just kind of do this iteratively to show all of the different pieces involved. And so hopefully you'll be able to follow along. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up the trigger, and we are going to choose email. And I'm going to say that I want to give this a custom email address here, and I'm going to say deck analyzer. And we're going to save this. And just be aware that if you're using these custom email addresses, that other people might trigger them either accidentally or maliciously, so it's best practice to also use this allowed senders button down here to limit or restrict who can send emails. But now that we have this set up, we can see that we get a couple launch variables by default. We get one called from, we get subject, we get message, and we get attachments. And so just to see what that all means, I'm going to add in a display content block here, and I'm just going to dump all of these variables in here. Message and attachments. And so if we go ahead, we'll have to publish this just because of the way the email triggers work. They don't work on drafts. So we'll go ahead and publish this, and I'm going to copy this email and go here, and we'll open this where I have attached the deck, and I'm going to forward this and forward it to the email that we just did. And now if I go back over to Mind Studio and I look in the debugger here and I refresh it, we'll see here is the run log for the email we just sent. And what we get in that message is we got from, we got the subject, and we got the full body of the message, and then we got the link to the PDF, which has been rehosted on Mind Studio CDN and is ready for us to work with it. So now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and keep building off of this. And so again, we're building the simple one first, and then we're going to build the more interesting, kind of exciting one. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to do extract text from file, and for the file we're going to put the first attachment, which I believe, so it's an array, and so we need to do attachments 0 in here. It might work without it, but this is just best practice, and we're going to say deck for the variable. And now if we run this and we put another display content block in here and we print out the result of deck, I can get rid of this step and then go back to the debugger here, and we'll see now we are OCRing the text from this deck, and we get back the full result here. And so this is nice because we'll be able to just pass this into an AI model for analysis, but it doesn't get a lot of graphics and images, and it doesn't really understand the structure of the deck. So like you might be able to, be able to infer some things from this, but it's not quite the same as having a human actually sit and go through and look at these slides and understand what's going on, especially when the people designing the deck often might use call-outs or graphics to point to specific things. That's not always clear in the OCR'd version, but it's a start to be able to do some basic analysis. And so now that we have this, I'm going to, instead of just displaying it, we are going to use a generate text block, and we're going to write here in a simple system prompt, which is let's say venture capital deck analysis. Venture capital pitch deck analysis. Okay, so this is just going to put a few simple guardrails on the model that we eventually choose to analyze the deck. And now that we've got that, we can say deck content And if you're not familiar, these kind of made-up XML tags are important for offsetting context from instruction inside of our LLM calls. And this is just general best practices. We've got a bunch of resources to help you learn kind of other best practices along this style that will improve both the efficiency and the accuracy of your LLM calls. And so this is one of them. We're going to include that deck content that we just looked at and say using the provided deck content, create, draft a high-level analysis of the pitch deck. Be sure to include company name, company description, and say problem, solution, value prop, traction and metrics, team, competitive landscape, follow-up questions, places to dig deeper. Let's say ideas for follow-up questions. And then let's say respond only with the draft of the report and absolutely no other text. So now we're going to go ahead and let's just run this again like we've been doing and see what we get back. And so we can see we got back this pretty comprehensive summary of a lot of what's going on in the deck. This is a little too overwhelming. The whole point is I don't want to read the deck, I just want to get the summary, so this is a little too much for me. And I think this is also a good example of why it's important to build these iteratively. And so we can say, go back to the prompt here, and we can say, using the provided deck content, draft a high-level TLDR analysis of the pitch deck. Keep things brief and use bullet points. And so now if we run this again, which I can go back to, again, I'm going to the debugger, I'm clicking on the previous run, I'm scrolling down to the generate text step, and I'm pressing replay. And in my case, I'm holding command. You would hold control if you're on a Windows computer, and clicking replay and tab to get this to restart here. And this is not doing any of the previous steps, it's just replaying the session from that last block that we just had. And great, so we can see this is a lot shorter. Still frankly not short enough, so I'm going to go back and touch it up a little more, but this is basically what we want to now format in an email that we can send back to the original email that triggered this workflow. So instead of displaying this to the user, I'm going to save to variable, and I'm going to call this analysis, and I'm going to now go into blocks and say send email, and we're going to send to, in this case, the trigger email. So this is the email that the message came from. We're going to just kind of loop around and send it right back. And for the subject, we're going to say subject. We're going to say analysis subject. Or actually, let's just leave it the same, and then maybe it'll appear, maybe Gmail will have it appear in the thread. And so we are going to include here in the message body, and we're going to include this analysis. And we're going to have it auto-generate some HTML and say format in a professional style suitable for a financial memo. We are going to now run this again. And we can see here that the send email block is automatically taking the markdown memo that we generated and formatting it as what will hopefully be some nice HTML. So you can think of this like the agent is sort of vibe coding the email that it's going to send back to us. And I'll show there are other ways to make that more deterministic, but this is just a nice quick way to get something that looks a little prettier than just raw text coming back to you. And so now that it's sent, if we go back to my email over here, we can see that we received an analysis of the pitch deck that includes the company overview with the problem, solution, value proposition, some of the revenue performance numbers here, some growth, some metrics, the team, investors, competitive landscape, the ask, some follow-up questions, all of that. So this hopefully will show how to build basically a simple email loop here. So we started by forwarding this thing an email. It took the attachment and extracted the text from the PDF that it was expecting, generated some high-level analysis based on that, and then sent it back to us with this HTML, nice HTML formatting that we asked it to do here. And so this is cool, but what I'd really like to do is to basically, like, I want to forward this, the deck, and have it reply with another PDF that has kind of high-level stuff on the first slide and then has some notes on the actual slides here. So let's go ahead and build that one. And that's going to be a little more complex. So I'm just going to kind of go through a lot of stuff quickly here, and I will talk out loud as I'm doing it, but don't expect, if you get stuck or overwhelmed, this is the point where I will plug the fact that we have some great boot camps, and we've got MindStudio University, which is a ton of educational materials, tons of video courses on how to do all this stuff. Nothing I'm going to do here is crazy. once you've learned some of the basics, it'll all make sense to you. And so with that said, let's go ahead and start to have a little more fun with this. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build another workflow down here, which is going to do analysis on an individual slide. And so let's call it slide. Let's call it analyze slide. And this is going to receive an image of the slide. And we're going to do two things here. One is we are going to OCR the image. And then two is we are going to analyze the image using an AI model. For the first one, we are just going to get the text back. That's fine. For the second one, we need to give it a prompt. So we already gave it the image, and we're going to say, and we can tune all of this, but let's just start there and see what we get. And so we're basically now doing kind of a double analysis here. And because we're doing these independently, I'm going to press Command G and group them. And I'm going to change this to parallel so they'll both run at the same time. And then coming out of this, we're now going to merge these descriptions. And we're going to say, and so what we're going to get back here is it's going to basically take both of these and merge them and save the result to a variable we're calling merged. And so what we should hopefully get back from this is a bit more comprehensive and descriptive analysis of each individual slide rather than just kind of trying to OCR the PDF. And now what we're going to do is we're going to return the description, and we're going to return back the image just so it's nicely mapped. And now we're going to go back here, and instead of this initial extract text from file, what we're going to do is we're going to do a convert PDF to images block, and this is going to be the thing that basically takes each slide in the PDF attachment and converts it into an individual image in an array that we will now pass into a run workflow block, which is going to allow us to iterate over each of those images using the analyze slide flow. We're going to say run multiple times. Our input array is going to be images, and our output variable is going to be, let's just call it deck. And we're going to run this in parallel. We're going to retry, set some retries here. Image is going to be the individual item, and then the output, we're going to get the image and the deck. And once we have that, we're going to have basically a big JSON array containing objects. And each object is going to have an image URL of the slide and then the description of what's on the slide. And so what we need to do after that is to update our analysis block here. And the analysis block is going to take all of those descriptions instead of this original content. And so we're going to say, what did we call this? Deck. And we want to make this shorter. And so what we want to do here actually is we want to output this as JSON because we want to be able to then use a generate asset block to make this kind of overview slide for our return PDF. And so I'm going to have it go in here, and this is again where things might look a little scary if you're not familiar with this, but I promise they're not. And so this is going to get us this structured analysis here that I'm then going to, instead of sending the email, I'm going to pass into a generate asset block. And we're going to use the interface designer to design our asset here based on what we've got in here. So I need to first let this run once, and then we will be able to use the interface designer to figure out what it's going to do. And so I'm going to go ahead and run all of this, which again is going to extract all the images from the PDF. It's going to run this workflow to analyze all of these different images and get back both the OCR result and the image analysis result, in this case using the Gemini Vision block. And then it's going to use all of that to generate some structured analysis and then pass it into this generate asset block, which I'm going to add a breakpoint on quickly just so it doesn't actually send the email. And then once we have that, we'll be able to see kind of what the shape of this data looks like and use the interface designer to build basically a new deck out of what we've got here. Oh, and we also want to, before I forget, we want to do actually another generate text block in here, which is going to take the analysis and the page content and provide us with an array of notes or annotations for each slide in the deck. So I'm going to add this in here. And I'm going to add in analysis. And so we're going to go into the output scheme again and make this JSON, and this is going to be, just give it a hint as to what to expect here. And we're going to save this as a variable called Annotations. Now we will get all of our slides, all the descriptions, the high-level analysis, and then individual annotations that we can map to the individual slides. And so let's go ahead and run this and watch it, and then we will get to do the fun part of designing the interface. And so now that it's finished, we can see here is the result, which is each of the images, and then this, full long description of what the content of the slide contains. And so now it's generating the analysis, and we can see that it finished here and returned it as structured data that we're going to be able to use in this later step. And now it's going ahead and it's generating each of those individual annotations for the slides. And we can see we got that back, and then we paused at the generate asset block here. So now I'm going to click Design Interface, and we're going to vibe code a new deck here. And the way this is going to work is we're going to vibe code a web page, an HTML page, and then we're going to use MindStudio's built-in compositor to export that as a PDF. And so the effect, if it works correctly, is going to be that you forward this email address a deck, and you get back a PDF that is the same deck, just with a new first slide that has our analysis and overview, and then annotations for each of the subsequent slides. And so to do this, I'm going to click Import Test Data, and we're going to pull in the data from the run that we just did here, and we can see here it all is over here. And I'm going to craft my little prompt here to get this started. And to do that, I'm going to look at some of the names in here just so I can reference them. And I'm going to make a little note here, which is going to be the prompt that I then paste into this chat. And now let's go ahead and paste this in here. We're using Claude Sonnet 4.5 to do this. We'll see if that's the model we want to use. If not, we can change it to kind of any other model to do this vibe coding stuff. But I'm going to leave it as the default for right now. And let's send this off and see what it's going to do. And so this is going to provision a development environment for us, a remote sandbox where we can execute the code and run this thing in development. And it's going to also write out the code, its initial stab at this page. And so we'll let both of those happen and then see what it does. Okay, so it looks like it's got all of this in here. It's not formatting the markdown, so we need to ask it to do that. And then, let's see, it looks like it's not correctly. So here's the slides. Let's see, are there images in here? There is the image. It's not, where is the image though? Oh, I see. Okay, so it messed up the parsing the array here. So what we're going to tell it to do is, thanks, just to be nice for when it takes over the world. Thanks, some updates. Okay, so it looks like it's formatting the markdown correctly. So these are all good now. Maybe we have each of these be its own slide. So now we get to do the fun bit of just messing around with this until we get it to a point where it looks nice. Okay, so here's this description, traction, and then this looks good. Okay, so let's now focus on getting the output right, and then I'll probably mess with this a little bit. I want it to just be more impactful. Let's compile this just to kind of lock in what we've made here. Let's go ahead and say PDF. We're going to say landscape. Now let's rerun it and just test and see if the PDF we're getting is kind of what we expect. So here is our PDF, and it is quite small, but pretty cool that it kind of made this whole thing. Description, revenue growth, leadership, market opportunity, business model, and then here are these annotations over here. And this is, so I think I want to make it basically bigger, but you kind of get the gist of this, that this is pretty cool, that we can kind of feed this in a PDF just by forwarding it an email, and it is going to generate this whole thing. And then all I need to do to send it back to me is just wire up this last send email block and add an attachment down here. And for the attachment, I'm going to say it's this PDF, it's this output PDF. And so now we don't need to have it do this. We can say see attached deck for the output. And I can go ahead and remove the breakpoint here. And so if we ran this again, which I will let it run in the background here while I make some other changes, it's going to email me back that deck. Okay, so let's get it to update some of this. Okay, yeah, this looks a lot bigger and my screen is smaller, but these are hopefully the dimensions that it will do this for. So let's compile this and regenerate it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we'll regenerate this and see what we get back. Okay, so here is our PDF. Much better on the sizing here. And if I go to my email, I can see here's the email from MindStudio with the attached deck. And that is pretty cool to me. So let's see, just to kind of have fun with it, let's go back to the original message and we will forward this. I'm going to publish this agent. We will forward this to the deck analyzer with the attachment. And we can see here is the incoming email and it sent it. And if I go back to my email over here, just a couple minutes later, I now have my new deck with all of the additional data in here. And so if I were going to keep working on this, there are a couple things that I would do. One is I would probably tidy this up to be a little less verbose. Like the thing that I actually want here is for this to be like quick at a glance. Like ideally I'd like this to just be one slide with a bunch of info on it that I can just glance at and get a feel for the deck that follows. But you've seen how easy it is to do that. That is just tinkering with this analysis block to be more verbose or less verbose or focus in on certain things, whatever you want to do there. And same thing with kind of these per slide annotations over here. Like I just want it to be a little more focused probably. And I would also, you know, if I were using this, if I were building this for an actual firm or for a company, I would provide a lot more context about the person who's receiving it. So if it's me who's receiving it or someone I work with, like how does this, you know, map to our investment theses? How does this map to our typical check size? Like all of that stuff you can just add in either in the system prompt here. You know, you could do a section called about the recipient or fund or whatever, and just, you know, type things in here, name of the person, name of the fund, blah, 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 and it'll take that into account. You could also be more verbose and include that in the actual message itself. And I think that's where you'd start to get a lot of real value, is just, you know, being able to quickly screen these things and see, you know, is this a fit for us? Where is this not a fit for us? You know, how do I evaluate it like that? It also adds some like color and branding, and if this were an actual, you know, venture capital firm, like use the brand style and make it feel like it's your own. All of that, again, like we did the hard work here. This is 95% of it. The rest of it is, you know, futzing around with the generate text block to get it to not be so chatty. You know, maybe trying different models here. This is using Sonnet 4.5. There's the new Gemini 3 model here that just came out today that we could, you know, also try this with. And if we wanted to do that, actually, we could open this in the profiler and compare Sonnet with the new Gemini 3 model here. See the difference in what it's going to do and what it's going to come back with, and also compare it on cost dimensions and some of these other things. That is kind of where the next steps of this would be, is basically tweaking the prompts and then, you know, playing with the vibe coding in the generate asset block to get it to match your style or mess around with it, whatever you want to do with it. Yeah, other than that, I think this is a really powerful pattern, this idea of being able to forward something to an agent and receive something back. So like you don't have to know anything about MindStudio to be able to use this. Just give someone the email address. And in fact, I'll probably tidy this up a little bit, and then I'll leave this email public for a bit and share it when I share this post. And if you want to forward it any decks and see what it comes back with, feel free to. I'll also leave a link where you can remix this yourself and start to build your own, because again, that real power is going to be unlocked when you start to infuse personalization and proprietary data into this about kind of who it's generating this analysis for and what they care about. So yeah, I hope this was an interesting watch to kind of see how to build an agent from start to finish like this, and debug, and the importance of building iteratively and tweaking with things and messing around. And also the value of, we actually didn't talk that much about AI here. I didn't spend much time on the models aside from, you know, testing the generate text block here, because at the end of the day, in terms of building this workflow, it doesn't really matter what model you use, because all you're doing is, you know, analyzing, you're doing some image analysis, you're doing some text generation, you're wiring it all together and you're sending it. So as long as the model is recent enough to correctly express itself in JSON, like anything else is just personal preference of like, is it smarter, less smart, whatever. And it's also not relying on any external knowledge. Like we specifically told it, you know, never rely on external knowledge, even if it's for a well-known company. So like, you know, I saw the announcement about the new Gemini 3 model, which I'm sure is great, and I will play around with it. But like most of the conversation is focused around like how smart it is and how intelligent it is. And like in these cases, and frankly in most of the really practical agents that people are building, doesn't need to be smart. It kind of just needs to be a grunt, and it needs to get things done reliably and effectively. Like in this case, it's, you know, surfacing data from existing documents. Like it doesn't need to be a PhD level genius to do that. In fact, that might get in the way of it being able to do that effectively. So yeah, just a different way of thinking about building with AI that we think is much more effective and impactful when it comes to getting real work done that's reproducible, that people can understand what's happening, that can actually make your life better and easier. So yeah, thanks for watching.